All right. Well, welcome to the ATP Project. You're with your hosts, Elisma, Matt, Jeff, and Steve, and there's four of us, and you may notice slightly different surrounds if you're watching us on YouTube. We are in a new building. This is awesome. We are going to be talking about hypertrophy today of the muscles because most males want bigger muscles, except for Jeff. He's bulked massive.
I have
already.
too much muscle. That's what I
Too
should
much
say.
muscle, you know.
Too much muscle.
But, we're going to be talking about that, and a lot of women want more tone, and we're going to be talking about some new innovations on how to do that because in the olden days, it's like just eat more protein, work out harder, and you'll grow bigger muscles.
What did Arnold Schwarzenegger know?
Yeah, what did he know? What did he know?
And it worked.
It worked.
It did.
It worked. and there's some fascinating research, but there's a bit more to it. Matt, there's a little bit more to it, isn't there?
Oh, there's a heap, and it's kind of cool because the research has been changing. No, not changing. They've just been getting better. Get a better understanding on how to actually measure muscles rather than just measuring with a tape measure cross-section. Now they can actually go through and measure things and know exactly what's changing in the muscle rather than just mass. There's a lot of really cool diagnostic techniques. There's a lot of really cool people working on taking the science so far to understand where they are, that they know what to look for to prove their hypothesis. And the cool thing is we're starting to get a better understanding of what's happening when muscles grow and learning a lot from the people whose muscles don't grow as well, can work out what's not happening in those cases. So today we're going to talk about the newest information that we can kind of find and piece it all together, pretty much like the order of which the muscle growth occurs are based on the newest research. Good news is everyone's right.
Yeah.
We just got to work out how to get the
well,
right
I mean,
synergy.
You used to do amateur bodybuilding, really, didn't you?
Wow, it's probably a little bit too far.
It was a very amateur body.
Yeah, it was. I mean,
weren't you?
people can check it out on my Facebook page if they want to, and I'm sure lots of people actually have.
Yeah, they have.
Download it on your phone.
No, but no, I used to be into it when I was younger. I actually hurt my knee and got into it from playing football's point of view, but like a lot of people do, and then sort of became pretty passionate about it. Was natural for most of it, and then decided to stray onto, as they say, the dark side for a while, just to find out what would happen. And it's interesting. I mean, obviously, in terms of you're talking about different types of hormones and drugs, and I know you guys are going to unpack that, so I'm not going to even go anywhere near it. But yeah, absolutely. And I think everybody wants to get the best return on their investment of time. But if you're prepared to put in more effort, you don't want that to be diminishing returns.
Yes.
And that's what. This is where people talk about overtraining, or you say under-recovering, Matt, I know. But it comes down to Dorian Yates, and in fact, I was talking with Matt in New Zealand, Matt Wally.
Oh, yeah,
and he was talking about how he subscribes to the Dorian Yates style of training, which was all around your growth hormone and peaking after about 40 minutes. And I think you can slowly increase that as your body understands and takes the load. But there's all sorts of things going on here, and this is what I'm excited about today's episode, because I know we've touched on a lot of these points. But science is continuously evolving, and what I mean by that is we're discovering more. As we get more tools, as we have more diagnostics, as we understand more, many of these things have been done. I mean, there used to be the whole talk about the actual number of muscle fibers would split and you'd get more and you could make them grow. Now, again, I don't know if that's science fact or science myth. I mean, it's been spoken about as well too. But as we get further down, we understand how to utilize science to maximize our results and to find out where those limits are in terms of overtraining and that sort of stuff. But supplementation and hormones, I'm really excited to hear what you guys have got to say. But before we get there, I just want to say, Mr. Romper Room, seriously, I love the way you introduce us, Steve. I feel like we're talking to a bunch of three-year-olds. So
It's awesome.
Just an exit.
Yeah.
Oh, I love it. No,
Well, I'm going to break it out even more simple because the muscle is made up of, I'm going to start off real simple, two parts, the inside and the outside of Lisbon. What are those things? We've got the inside and the outside.
That's right. So when we talk about hypertrophy and growth, there's two different types of things that we want to grow, right? And like you said, it's the inside and the outside. So the inside is your muscles, which is made up of myofibrils. That's kind of like,
the meat.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's like these little tubules, and they kind of like get connected, and it's got the mitochondria and everything like that in there. Within the myofibrils, you have like sarcomeres and things like that. But that's essentially your muscle cells and your muscle fibers. That's the inside. And that needs completely different nutrients and factors to grow. Covering that is what we have is your connective tissue, which is also called fascia, which is also called the extracellular matrix, whichever one you want to call it. And this is like a mesh, a network of fibers that's mainly more made up of collagen as well as fibroblasts and things like that. And this mesh, in the old, in the past, we kind of ignored it. And, when doctors were dissecting cadavers, they would throw this fibrous tissue away, and they'll only study like the blood vessels and the nerves and the muscles and everything like that. But now they started getting very interested in this fibrous network, and kind of like dissolved the muscle and left the fascia there to kind of see what this looks like. And they found it's like this, it's like all these connected tunnels. So all of the fascia in the body is connected. You don't get a fascia here, a fascia there, or anything like that. They're all connected through these little tunnels. And so you'll have fascia that surrounds nerves, fascia that surrounds blood vessels, fascia that surrounds the whole muscle, but then also the myofibrils within the muscle, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And in this fibrous component, you have nerve cells as well. So this is kind of like where a lot of the nerve receptors sit. But it's also how muscles communicate with each other, which we'll talk a little bit about. But that's essentially the two different types. You have that outside, Matt talks about the sock or the shell, what
sac.
have you. The sac, that's right. And then
Jeff
we have...
talks a lot more about sacs than me.
That's right.
We talk about the meat and sac as the,
Meat and two veg, I think we talk about, Steve.
You talk about the frank and beans.
Yeah.
But yes, you have the muscle, which
Well,
is
it's
the
new and
meat
noteworthy.
inside the sac, which is the fascia.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well,
What's in your sack? What? So, hang on. So we got the sack, and you got your meat in your sack.
You put the meat inside the sac.
Right. And I know, Matt, as far as discussions that we've had previously, is that the fascia has been largely neglected up until probably recent years. Everybody was focusing on the meat, the muscle, and it was all about, training
Calories,
that, but also,
mTOR, IGF.
exactly.
So we looked at
food and nutrition, but nothing. And this is where you've come out. And I know for people that are listening to our podcast going, okay, well, we know that Matt's going to talk about the importance of the fascia and feeding that, which we've done. But there's more, right? But
there's a lot more, because it's starting to piece it all together.
Yeah.
Because this is a cool thing when you see, you see people that have got a conflict of interest, all right? So you see people that, like the collagen people, they're biased towards collagen. You see the whey people are biased towards whey. We've got leucine, we've got branch chains, we've got the creatine, we got
which are all awesome.
we got the arginine, the nitric oxide, and then we got the people that it's all about calorie surplus and the style of training. Well, you're all right. Is the best thing. There was a theory, and I got a paper here with a cool picture that we'll put up somehow, and however Steve normally does it. But this one here shows how the one theory used to be that you actually build the meat, and then it forces the fascia to expand. Yeah. Well, I found this wicked paper by Michael Roberts, and in fact, I watched him present it at an ISSN conference. And what I loved about this particular conference, we had Stefan Oeser and that from the Collagen Institute in Germany, the guy behind the collagen science. We had the whey people, we had the leucine people, we had ISSN are pretty much the creatine people. They're they're right behind it. Yeah, we had Rick, Eric Rolson, all those sort of dudes that we had William Llewellyn with arachidonic acid there.
Oh man, that's an awesome story.
So what we had is we had all of these people that had all of this data showing that their confirmation bias was believing that their tool was the one that was driving it. Well, you're all right. And now when you piece all the information together, it is really, really cool. So Michael Roberts' paper that he presented, I found was the most fascinating. And I cornered the poor bugger after it and asked a lot of questions. He did commit. He said he'll come on our podcast. Cool. So I'm going to find the bus and make him do it.
Yeah.
He showed this paper. And what they did is they did the ISSN, what do they say there? Anyway, the way they decided you build muscle, what do they call that? Position statement or whatever. Whatever they do. Anyway, so there's an accepted way, and they've referenced a way that in the papers, according to ISSN and all the other proper trainers, this is a way of inducing muscle hypertrophy, okay? So they used a well-studied training program that has been proven to build muscle. And in that thing, about 40% of the people build muscles. Some got none. 20% didn't build muscle. 40% actually lost muscle.
Yes.
One poor bugger lost more muscle than the greatest muscle building guy built.
So they lost muscle despite going through this perfect training
Proven
regime.
Training program.
And protein.
Just before we move on, I'll quickly mention this is why it's damn important to have a coach.
Yeah.
Because if you go online and you find a proven training program, or if you get through a book, you get a proven training program supported and put by the ISSN and published in a journal, you may still be one of the people that lose muscle. And you've got to accept that as reality, and you need to work with your coaches and work out why. And what I was
Scary amount of
fascinated by,
muscle
so
that guy's
these
lost.
people here, the ones that built the muscle, were analysed
Yeah.
to see what happened in those people. So the people that built muscle, what happened and in what order did things happen?
I'd be more interested in the other group.
Well,
Yes,
no,
get
they
to it.
study. Oh, that's what we
they
want to
have?
talk about. Yes,
Oh.
because we know what didn't happen in them
Wow.
as well. So this was the exciting bit. So, and this is where you learn. That's why I said you learn a lot about people. Lack of success is such a big success for a scientist. You know, you learn more from failed science than you do from the successful science. So anyway, but these guys use the top level levels of testing. They've even published other papers about how to actually measure muscle growth. Got all that published first to make sure that they had the right techniques in place. Anyway, the coolest thing is they referenced creatines and nitric oxides and proteins and leucines and all the mTOR theories, the IGF-1s, all the stuff that we know about muscle protein synthesis, which is building the meat. And they went and analysed all of that and looking for everything. And what they discovered in the people that built the muscle and in the people that couldn't build the muscle, what they couldn't do was actually build the fascia, the sock. So the first steps in the people that build the muscle, what happened was the fascia got bigger, the muscle fibers within the shell or the sock or the infrastructure became diluted. And it was the combination of the building of the sarcoplasmic reticulum, building of the sarcomere, building of the fascia and the collagen, and the dilution and relative deficiency of muscle meat inside the shell that initiated a lot of the most muscle protein synthesis later to fill in. So the first stages were swelling of the sock. Now, then it goes back and goes, so vasodilators, what do? They engorge the muscle. What happens when you use a vasodilator and train for pump? You get massive swelling. Creatine, what's it famous for? Holding lots of water in the muscle. So if you creatine load. Now, also these processes involved and muscle protein synthesis heavily dependent on ATP. Even our mate Diego talking about cluster training was all about training for a certain period of time and waiting for a certain period of time for the ATP to regenerate before you go again. And it was all about trying to find the optimal window for ATP. So if you have a look at supplementation like ATP supplements or things that will support ATP production, maintain that hydration, the vasodilation with the nitric oxide, all of this is true. All of this is right. So when you have a look at, people argue, well, there's no real link, and they say, does the arginine stimulate muscle protein synthesis, or is it the nitric oxide that's doing it? And you say, well, both. So what you'll find is, but without the hydration, without the ability to swell, without that ability to expand the fascia and that muscle, then you don't get the signals to build more fascia. You don't actually get the signals then to fill that muscle with meat. So we can go through the details of it all now, because it's kind of really cool, because what these studies are showing is 1 + 1 = 3. If we're looking at building the shell, and then so everything we know about building the shell through training, the utilization of collagen, fascia support, specific types, specific hormones associated with building a shell, and then you do all of the calorie surplus, the leucines, the creatines, the nitric oxide to fill the shell with meat, you build better muscle. But there's another one, because it's one is that shell, one is filling it with meat. The third one is the type of training we're doing. So it can be 1 + 1 + 1 is 10. My math sucks.
No.
But do you see what it's an example of synergy here too. So if they never publish these papers, you never bloody know. And we'd be stuck using branched chain amino acids, whey and creatine, which is what we've been doing for so long. And it works. It does it backwards.
But and the whole picture is it's a piece of the puzzle that absolutely is, as you're saying, that these scientists have gone out and proven it. And we can see it and all the rest of it. But it's just one slice of the pie.
And they're both right.
If we can look at a holistic thing and combine all of these things in our nutrition, our timing, our pre, our post, our recovery, stretching, all these things all together, then you're creating the perfect beast.
I'll probably add something else. Matt, you said that you need, the You need to have the fascia, you need to have the muscle. It depends on the training. And I think one thing that I'll add in there is also the quality of the protein.
Yeah.
Because they're not all the same. You know, there's difference between soy protein, egg protein, whey protein, and things like that.
So, and at the end, and I'm just for the people that are listening at the moment, because obviously you guys are deep delve into the science to give people the confidence that you know that you've researched and you know what you're talking about, which obviously you guys do. But at the end, we'll summarize it in terms of, you know, your nutrition, what should be in your diet, you know, everything from, you know, micros to macros to training to you know, different with Dago with the training sort of that he said, the other girls that have done the booty training. And I know a lot of guys go, oh no, not the booty girls again. But there's a methodology in terms of what they're doing and why they're getting that muscle to really pop the way that they want it to.
Yeah.
And because you've sort of broken down, a lot of people are doing things that are getting results, but they don't know why they're doing it, but they know that it's getting the result.
Yeah, and they're getting, and like that slight awareness of just that one extra thing that they could do with it, or one thing they could reduce,
or how you
might
could
make all the difference.
One of my favorite sayings in business is AAA. So adopt, adapt, apply. Things outside of your industry that you can use. So here you've got some guys that are obviously wanting to put on some serious size, and they could actually learn something from these booty girls and go, actually, if I change that but use it on my delt or use it on my pec or what have you, what they're doing to actually exaggerate the results, I could actually do. Anyway.
So there you go. So with pump, so when people train for pump, you look at Henny Rambod's training techniques, a lot of the bodybuilder guys, Mick Galley's and those guys, they're always doing the same sort of stuff where they train their muscles to get maximal pump to the point where they're not capable of making good contractions because it's too engorged with fluid and swollen. And that creates the latitudinal pump. So it makes the muscles go fat, all right, and round, and full, okay? But they can't even make full contraction. So they keep going shorter and shorter to maximize that pump. And that's all latitudinal. And it feels awesome and full. Very important for muscle hypertrophy, been very important. If you have a look at some of the girls in the squat rack and what they've learnt now to do the booties, to really build that booty, when they get that pump, they're not actually doing those partials at where the muscle's at shortest. They're actually down in a full stretch position doing those little partial pumping to get the maximum amount of pump into the booty, to get the maximum amount of blood engorgement and swelling and fullness. So just stop. We're training for pump. You've got maximum amount of latitudinal pump because your muscles are going shorter and shorter. If you then stretch it long, so if you go down into that full stretch position and still work for pump, then not only are you going to get latitudinal stretching on the fascia, but you're also going to stretch it long. And what actually happens as your fascia gets stretched and strained and full of blood and inflammatory markers, pain signals.
Arachidonic acid.
Which is one of the inflammatory mediators through the
so
prostaglandin
this is William Llewellyn. I just want to mention him.
So this
he
is where
deserves
William
it.
Llewellyn has been battling for a decade to show that arachidonic acid is not killing everyone. It's actually important compound for muscle growth. We were talking earlier about there's studies even on cyclooxygenase inhibitor drugs that inhibit inflammation and stop muscle growth. But when you get maximal pump and then you go down into a stretch position and keep going stretching, you're actually making the fascia extremely permeable, and that is what initiates the satellite cell migration. And it's the satellite cell migration that happens after injuries that initiates growth, but in the absence of an injury, you get hypertrophy. So, quickly, just let me say this bit.
You get it out.
As you swell up the fascia and you get the pump, it's very important because that is what initiates the growth of the muscle protein synthesis. The other aspect is actually the hormonal aspect. The muscle, the meat inside, is where it's responding to things like testosterone and dihydrotestosterone. So the androgenic theory of muscle growth, or the androgenic anabolic steroids, all focus on dihydrotestosterone, testosterone's ability for muscle protein synthesis. But the fascia, the outside, is actually controlled by estrogen and oxytocin. And oxytocin is our love chemical.
I love you, man.
So oxytocin is so important. So the angst, the aggression, and I'll give you an example. Trenbolone is Tren,
Yeah.
as a lot of people refer. So that's one of the most potent anabolic steroids. And it's always been described as an androgenic anabolic steroid.
And makes you a little bit crazy sometimes. Roid rage is associated with that as well too.
Yeah.
You know? DHT making you a bit crazy angry.
Yeah, well, it's interesting to know that it increases oxytocin 50 times.
Which is funny, 'cause
as
that's the
opposed
love
to, significantly more oxytocin action from trenbolone than you'll ever get of any of the androgenic steroids. And they now believe that trenbolone's ability to build muscle so well was based on its ability to manipulate oxytocin to build the sac and the fascia and the shell that your muscle needs to fill up with all the protein that you're consuming.
When I was younger and stupid, I would never
talked
go
about that, sorry.
near Tren because my understanding is its affinity with DHT, and obviously my hair loss. I wouldn't touch it because it would just make your hair fall out in handfuls. But it's
It
interesting.
still does that.
Yeah.
But outside of that, it does oxytocin.
Wow.
So a lot of those
So it's the
effects-
love, even though. But so is it this?
So
How does
DHT, so you got DHT, so it'll activate DHT receptors as a receptor effect,
Yeah.
where it makes your body think as though you got a lot of DHT,
Yeah.
and that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Maybe that's even part of it. We don't fully understand oxytocin well enough yet in relation to the other. It is actually possible through negative feedback that there is an oxytocin release. I don't actually know at this point. But
interesting.
Interesting fact is that the most anabolic steroid is actually, they believe its anabolic actions comes from oxytocin and not the androgenic aspect, and therefore it also confirms the other theories around the sarcomere.